back to Speculative Dude Presents. I'm your host, Speculative Dude. Now, before I get to my review, I do want to apologize because, again, it's been a couple of years. I do want to thank those of you who have stuck with me, and I promise I'll be doing this more on a regular basis. I know it sounds like an excuse, but I had computer issues and just life in general. You know, life happens, so sometimes I didn't have as much time as I wanted to. But for now, we'll be trying to get back into doing some regular reviews. Now, I haven't been going to the theater as much as I had the last couple of years, but I will say this. I do plan on still finishing the car movie reviews that I was planning out, including leading up to what I believe is the worst car movie I've personally ever seen, as well as starting a new series on martial arts movies. For those of you who know, I've been doing Taekwondo for most of my life, and even here in China, I've still been practicing. Now, there have been great martial arts movies and a lot of really bad ones. And obviously here in China, there's a plethora to look through as well. So we'll be taking a look at some of those soon too. Now, for the moment, sit back, enjoy, and welcome back. Okay, well, today's movie that we're going to take a look at is actually a two-parter. It's Drift Highway Battle RxR. Now, what that is despite the name Drift, there is no actual drifting in here. It's exploring a character and his drifting, and his racing on the Wangan. Now, specifically, they call it RxR because the main battle will be between Nissan GT-Rs. As our starting character, Hiroshi, he starts out driving an older Skyline GT-R 32. From anyone who knows those, they came out and were released, I believe, in 1989, and were continually released until either 1994 or 1995. And considering cars at the time, it was very good. Since then, obviously, there have been, technologically more advanced cars, but even now, the cars are very well respected. So, I do hesitate a little bit because this movie was made in, I believe, 2008, or it was at least released around 2008, I believe. And one of the issues is that not many people, myself included, believe that an R32 would still be the quote-unquote king of the Wangan after all that time. Possible, but not that likely. But we'll put that aside. I will say this is very much a Nissan-focused two-movie series. It's basically just part one and part two. They talk about it as if it's a full series, like episodes, but it really isn't. It's just two overlong episodes which equated to two movies. Now, Hiroshi drives as I said, a GT-R 32. And he shows up early in the movie with one of his friends who drives a Z33. For those of us who know, the Z33 in the West was the Nissan 350Z. Most cars, as I said, that get focused in here will be Nissans. So you have your main characters driving a pair. They get challenged by a Toyota Supra, which Hiroshi then beats in a race on the Wangan. Not really by using all that much skill or power, but he ends up, in fact, things seem kind of neck and neck until he manages to maneuver around a car that seems to be braking, which causes the Supra to then brake and then go into a spin. And, obviously then lose the race because he's going to fall farther back. So you kind of do have to question Hiroshi's actual driving skill a little bit at that point. Not saying that he's bad, but it's just like, okay, is he really that good? And that will come up again during the series. One of the things that you will notice while going through this movie is that even though, I will say this, they do a very good job of their visuals and their effects. They don't use CGI, it's all practical effects. But one of the issues is that because the budget is clearly not very high, there are no actual crashes in this movie. There's a couple of nice spin-outs, things like that, but there's no actual collisions. No cars actually get wrecked in this. Like I said, We're talking low budget, relatively low budget movie here. And again, for what they do with it, it actually ends up coming off as pretty decent. But it is noticeable. If a car spins out like that on the Wangan, it's gonna crash, but not in this movie. So, okay. So, of course, after, dusting the Supra in his race, his friend sees a brand new GT-R 35 on the road. And there's a few things in here that let you know when this was filmed, at least. Because when the GT-R 35 came out, it was a huge departure from anything in the Skyline line before that, to the point where they decided not, at least internationally at least, not to label it a Skyline. They just call it the GT-R, or in some cases just the GT-R 35. Though, if you look on a lot of Japanese websites, a lot of them will still call it the Skyline GT-R 35. Internationally, it was never, as far as I know, it was never referred to that internationally. Debate that what you will. I've seen some people get really nasty and when they hear the word Skyline put on it, but it's like, okay, not really that big a deal. But anyway, there's a lot of things said about the GT-R 35 that let you know that this was made right when they were first released. Specifically, there's something about it having specifically 480 horsepower, and no more than that, just 480 horsepower. And also they talk a lot about the ECU and how hard it is to tune and all that, because if anyone who knows cars remembers, when that was released, Nissan said that their ECU was uncrackable. And it was for about 2 months. It's one of those things, basically, as soon as you say you can't do something with it, somebody will show up to do it. But basically they make a big deal about how hard it is to tune the ECU in here. Interestingly, most of the tuning that is talked about in this movie, not just for the R35, but even for the R32 and other cars, they really talk about the ECU tuning mostly, more than tuning anything else, more than any other parts. And to some degree that's understandable, because the newer cars, everything is controlled electronically. Older cars, there was more mechanical, but there was, electronics involved. Newer ones, everyth's electronic, So everything's controlled electronically. So if you want to tune it, you have to, get through the ECU. Not that you didn't on the old ones, but you understand, it's much more involved now than it used to be. Now, getting back to the story, Hiroshi's friend challenges the GT-R 35. Again, he's driving a Fairlady Z33 or Nissan 350Z, which I can vouch for myself. I used to have one. It's a very good car. It's a very good base platform. It's a wonderful thing for tuning. I don't feel it ever got the respect that it really deserved. People liked it, but it's like, I don't like, as far as the tuner community, I don't feel like it ever got the hype that a lot of other cars did. But putting that aside, his friend, is driving his Z, challenges the GT-R, basically gets skunked pretty quickly, as expected. Again, it's another scene of he's going, and then the car ends up spinning out. It's like, again, hitting nothing, just spinning out. Hiroshi then takes off after the GT-R 35, which proves to be too much for him. They go back to the garage, and Hiroshi's annoyed, because, again, he's supposed to be the king of the Wangan, and despite that, he lost. So he talks to his other tuner friend, who he convinces to help him, tune up his car even more. And again, this goes to the point of showing when this movie was made, because he talks about the GT-R having a maximum horsepower of 480, which, again, only very early in the car's run was it limited to 480 horsepower. Very quickly after its release, it was up to, I think, 495, and then there was the Black Edition, which came out less than a year later, which had a little over 500 horsepower, and since then it's consistently had 500 horsepower or more, as far as I know. So, like I said, this shows you when this movie came out. But they talk about you can't tune this for more than 480. So therefore, we have a chance to tune your R32 to be more powerful because it's older, but it's there's more parts and there's more stuff we can work with here. At least that's what they're claiming. Well, they do it, and what they don't know is that the GT-R 35 is being driven by a rich guy who basically, he runs his business, but the thing he worries about or thinks about more than anything else is racing, street racing. Apparently he had a rival back in the day, and his rival died, but he still keeps racing because supposedly that's the only thing that makes him feel alive now is street racing. So, he used his money to buy a GT-R 35 and hired a computer genius to crack the ECU and do, so he could tune it better. And so Hiroshi goes out on the road and gets challenged by this guy again, and the guy in the R35 again wins again, which of course makes Hiroshi extremely angry now. So his mechanic friend suggests that he go talk to this other guy, Mr. Arosha, I believe it was, and there's more than a bit of a faltering with this character, because while this character is supposed to have been a former professional racer who, now Hiroshi doesn't know that, but he's a former professional racer who now runs his own private little track to help people learn racing skills and also tune their cars, etc. But he's a very humble guy now, though. So of course Hiroshi is arrogant and thinks this guy is just a know nothing, and doesn't want to listen to the guy's advice. Despite going to him for help, he doesn't want to listen to his advice. It really doesn't make any sense. Also, by the time he shows up, Hiroshi, he drives an old '70s Skyline GT-R. Was it 72 or something like that? The old school, the last model before they discontinued it until the R32. And ends up beating Hiroshi around the track in using that old car, despite Hiroshi having his souped up R32. And just to show how good a racer this guy is. But then he goes in. They go into the office, and he happens to see something on the wall about this guy having been a professional racer in the past, and it kind of dawns on him. It's amazing. This is no way. And then they never mention the guy again. They never go back to his shop. They never say anything about it. His name is never even brought up again. So it's you have this whole side plot about this guy who's a professional racer giving him advice or having a chance to get advice from this guy, and then they just drop it. It's just completely pointless. And again, as I said, at that point, Hiroshi, before he realized the guy used to be a professional, Hiroshi wasn't listening to him. Was taking none of the guy's advice. Didn't want to listen to him at all, despite going to him for help. So basically, the character was completely pointless, which is honestly really annoying when watching it. It's why'd you even bring him up? Now, that being said, there's also another character of Hiroshi's girlfriend, because of course there is. She doesn't like his racing. Now, something I failed to mention earlier is that apparently Hiroshi is still supposed to be in high school. Because, of course, you see him and it's a 25-year-old high school senior. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, of course. So many jokes about older people playing high schoolers, but it's this guy doesn't look anywhere near a high school age. So, his girlfriend doesn't approve of his street racing. In addition to that, she mentions that he's going to be graduating soon and should focus on his studies, which of course he can't do because his mind is now messed up. He's lost to this GT-R 35 twice, and he can't focus on school. And then that plot is completely dropped. So his girlfriend shows up every once in a while to be angry at him and threaten once or twice to break up with him, which I think at one point she does, and then of course they get back together later. But it's really? It's one of those situations where it comes off as so cliche that it's disappointing. It's disappointing. So in Volume 2, Hiroshi happens to run into, out of pure coincidence, yeah, right, someone who has another R35. And she happens to be a business rival of this man. What you find out later is she's the sister of his old racing rival who died, and his ex-girlfriend, the rich guy's ex-girlfriend. She gives Hiroshi, essentially, gives Hiroshi a new GT-R 35 so he can race this guy. And of course drama ensues, arguments back and forth, you know. Then when he realizes her connection to the rich guy, he questions everything, which actually does make sense. They also never really explain why she gives him an R35, to rival his. They do say why she picks him, though. I will say this. So why, I think the only reason they give him another R35 is because, again, Nissan movie. But, maybe they even had Nissan as a sponsor. They might, it's possible. So she gives him this car, and you find out, again, at the very end, that supposedly, it's one of those situations, and they do this a lot in Japanese movies and anime. They have characters say, oh, he looks so much like blah 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 character who died. Mind you, they always show a picture of the character who died and then the main person, and they never look anything alike. It's like, they don't even have the same hair color. It's like, oh, you look just like, it's like, oh, he looks just like my first love, and then you see a picture of her first love, and the main character's like, they don't look at all alike. I don't know who came up with this cliche, but it's ridiculous. And again, they do it here. Supposedly, Hiroshi looks like her brother, who was the rich guy's racing rival. And at the very end, of course, in their, end-all, be-all race, when he passes, the rich guy, they have the rich guy look over at him, and instead of seeing Hiroshi, you see her brother's face, which, it's just like, again, he looks nothing like Hiroshi. It just, But, like I said, the whole drama build-up and all this, and also they do say that the reason why she broke up, the lady who broke up with the rich guy, was because he became obsessed with racing, and that racing was the only thing that made him feel alive after her brother died. So, they have that cliche in there. Hiroshi gets back with his girlfriend, and, he realizes that, the rich guy was so obsessed with racing, and it, kind of ruined his personal life and his relationships, and he realizes he doesn't want to be like that, so he apologizes to his girlfriend, they get back together, and that's it. Overall, the driving scenes are okay. One kind of issue that I have, it's an understandable issue that they have while filming these, but it is a little bit annoying, is they refer to this as the Wangan, but you can't tell that it's the Wangan. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Wangan is the highway system that goes around Tokyo Bay. There are different highway systems. For example, the inner city cycle is often referred to as the C1 loop. Then there's the Wangan that goes out towards the bay and that. And which is interesting. There's a lot of video game representation of it, which is really cool. But they refer to it here and in numerous movies, but rarely is there anything on video or in the movies that show they're on the Wangan. Now, part of that is because I know in Japan it's very hard to film. It's not easy to film these things, so it's easier to just film something and then say it's in another place, or even if it's filmed there, it might be difficult to show. But, like I said, when you say it's in the Wangan, it would be nice to be able to tell that it's the Wangan. Just my thoughts. Now, overall, I would have to give this one, I don't know. I did do a lot of complaining, but I have to give it a 3 out of 5 as far as the accuracy of racing goes. Whoever did this knows a lot of the electronic technology of cars, but there's almost no mention of mechanical technology at all. In fact, actually, I'd have to lower this. Probably a 2 out of 5. Just because, as I said, the visuals, you can tell, like I said, they did do a good job with the budget for what they had, you know, but clearly the budget was not very high. I think if they had a higher budget, it would have been, you know, would have served them better. But you know, it is what it is. You know, if you enjoy movies, you might enjoy it. You do need to watch both parts to get the whole story. So overall, it's not gonna offend most people, you know, racing sensibilities, unlike some other movies that I'll get into later. Red line. Now, it is what it is. Is it bad? Nah, not really. Is it great? No, certainly not. Is it good? Meh, it's okay. So, like I said, 2 out of 5. So, coming up next, I'm going to be doing a movie that I've been putting off for a while. I actually did record a review of it, but ended up just deciding to scrap it. And that is the movie Red Line. It was referred to back in its day as a Fast and Furious killer. We'll see if it was. Until next time, I'm your host, Speculative Dude. Speculative Dude, out.